All right, T's Weird Week live. Hey everyone, I'm T. Krulos.
And I'm Heidi Erickson.
Yeah, it's been a really crazy couple of days as far as weird news goes.
Yeah, it's been awesome. It's great for weirdos like us. This is like weirdo Christmas this week.
yeah. I know a lot of kind of conspiracy themed news this week. So I think we're going to start with the Georgia Guidestones.
Yeah, didn't they blew it up?
Someone took offense to the Guidestones and had some sort of explosive device that went off at 4 a.m. and completely destroyed one of the stones. So, if you're not familiar with what they are or you haven't seen the news, the Georgia Guidestones appeared in 1980. Some people say they're like ancient.
I mean, that's
druids.
That's pretty old. That's pretty old.
Ancient druids put them there.
They didn't even have the internet in 1980. That's like a lifetime ago, at least.
Yeah, they are these giant 19-foot tall granite slabs.
They were.
And carved into these granite slabs are a list of 10 directives, maybe I'll call them.
Guides, if you will.
Yeah, guiding like 10 rules to the universe or something like that. And
to rebuild, I thought it was to rebuild society after the inevitable apocalypse.
Well, it's a little vague because there's no like introduction granite slab, it's just this list,
right?
So, and it's the slabs is in English, and then it's also been translated into 8 other modern languages. So there's a lot of translation service there.
Sure.
And it's been sort of a cornerstone of conspiracy for a long time because a lot of them are really kind of, nothing too alarming about them. There's these 10 directives. Like, here's one of them. Be not a cancer on the earth, leave room for nature. Okay, that's nice,
That's good advice. That's some Smokey Bear stuff. I could get behind that.
Yeah, balance personal rights with social duties.
Also a good idea.
Protect people and nations with fair laws and just courts. So a lot of these are like, all right, yeah, I'm down with the Guidestones, but
also put pineapple on your pizza. So saith the Lord.
Here's the first part where people get a little nervous. It says, guide reproduction wisely, improving fitness and diversity.
Ew.
So that, people are like, oh, they're talking about eugenics or something, right?
Yeah, I'm starting to feel like when you're reading a Tinder profile and you're like, oh, he's 6'5". Oh, he has a master's degree. Oh, he listens to Jordan Peterson. Wah, wah, wah.
And then here's the one that's really raises eyebrows, let's say. A directive says, maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. So our population's a bit over 500 million now.
Yeah, we're like 7 billion people. Okay. Okay. Well, obviously it took a turn. It got a little dark there towards the end. I was feeling it in the beginning, but then it got a little rough towards the middle-ish end there. Where did they come from, these Guidestones in Georgia?
Well, yes, this is why it's also a conspiracy classic, is because not much is known about their origin. They appeared in 1980. A person calling themselves R.C. Christian had them commissioned at a local granite, shop, and they bought the square of a farmer's land just so they can construct them. But no one really knows who did, which is why it's led to rumors that this is the New World Order, and they have created this and they've put their plan to commit genocide for all the
Yeah.
world to see on these granite slabs out in the
Yeah.
middle of nowhere in Georgia, kind
Yeah.
of feel.
Well, first of all, I would just like to say that if any of you out there are planning on commissioning a monolith of some sort meant to survive an apocalypse and be a guide for, humanity or whatever cephalopodic entities rise up in our vacuum space, I would say pick a name a little bit less obvious, like Mutt Buncher or Private Parts or something like that, because you're missing an opportunity there to have a joke that will literally last forever. So fail right there. Like, I mean, outside of obviously the eugenics and the population control, just a missed opportunity for a really good joke. So like straight away, just a fail. Secondly, I had heard, and you had told me that this was just a theory, which just goes to show you how easy it is to believe some garbage on the internet. That it had been commissioned by some dude who was like all about in the KKK and like supremacy and weirdness, which I find a lot easier to believe than the New World Order,
Yeah,
personally,
yeah,
frankly. I mean, why invent new villains when you have perfectly good villains at home? We're not
right.
going we're not going to McDonald's for villains when we have some in the fridge. Um, so, but you said that's not a thing. But what was
Well, I don't know. I don't know.
okay?
I know that there's a guy who self-produced a documentary, and that's the conclusion that he came to. I'd like to see his homework on that before I believe it's true, because I've seen some homemade documentaries,
Me
and
too.
they're rather poorly fact-checked.
Mm,
So it makes sense. I mean, Georgia certainly has other racist monuments in it,
right, tons.
and
I mean, their state house, I guess, pretty much everything there. Yeah, but okay. So I looked at the footage that they took from the air shortly after this thing was blowed up, which did happen at 4 in the morning, which I feel is pretty cheap. I think if you're going to blow something up, you should do it in the middle of the day where people can appreciate it. But it seemed like just one of the slabs, because there's 3 slabs all sitting together in like a circular type formation. Maybe that's why it's called America's Stonehenge. It's not even close to as cool as Stonehenge. It looked like one of them got blown to smithereens, like just really completely, absolutely pulverized,
yeah.
totally 100% end game type situation. And the other ones were damaged but still intact. I wonder if they picked that one stone on purpose. Like, do we know which one of the stones got blown up? Maybe it
Uh,
was
it,
on purpose.
It would be interesting to see if it was the English version or the other stones have the same thing written. It's just in other
Yeah,
languages.
yeah,
So you would assume they go for English because that's the one they would be able to read. But I don't know. It looks, I don't know, like if they targeted that one in particular or if they were hoping that they would all be blown up and it just
yeah.
ended up taking out one, because they're pretty solid.
And the granite.
Yeah, so they must have had something bigger than your typical firework to blow it up, because
Yeah,
that's pretty impressive.
that was 2 or 3 M80s at least. Did anybody claim responsibility for it, or
No, not that I've known. I've
no?
not seen anyone claim responsibility for it. But here's an interesting tie-in to the story. This year, there was a woman who campaigned to be governor of Georgia, and she didn't win. This was the type of candidate that you vote for if you think that Marjorie Taylor Greene is a little bit too sane for you.
She
Then,
is.
then,
She needs
then
to perk it up.
you you turn to a candidate like Candace Taylor is the name of this candidate. Here is her campaign slogan. I love it. It's 3 words: Jesus, guns, babies.
Isn't that a Merle Haggard song? I think it is. Just cribbing from Merle Haggard. I'm
it,
cool. Okay. What'd she
this,
say?
this is, well, I'm going to give you another reason why I am not a fan of Candace Taylor, is that she said that she'd give several executive orders if she was elected to be governor of Georgia. That's the position she was running for.
Sure.
Okay, 10 or more executive orders. First day in office, she's throwing down the hammer, and these executive orders are going out.
Okay.
Here's one of them: executive order to ban furry attire at schools. And
Like,
in her tweet, she says, "The furry days are over when I'm governor."
that is a song. I know that for sure. That's Florence. That's Florence and the Machine. I've heard that one. So I presume she means attire that is related to the subculture
Yes.
of people who dress up as animals,
Yep.
not just anything that's overly fuzzy, like somebody's walking around with a ruler trying to make the line between furry and fuzzy. No, just for okay.
No, our furry friends.
I love them so much. They're so why does she
because she says it's gotten out of control and that children are going to school dressing as cats and dogs, and they're meowing and barking, and get this, they are using litter boxes instead of toilets in the schools.
Oh wow. I imagine the school janitor would find that a vast improvement, actually. But so this woman is terrified of cat girls, is pretty much what it comes down to. Golly, I'm so sorry that I missed the cat girl generation. You kids are just doing so great. Look how you scared the almost governor of Georgia. Fucking incredible. Just really good job, guys. So she thinks the kids are, and that's like Satan, or just she's not comfortable with it. Either way.
She thinks it's she also made, very homophobic comments about transgender people, and so she thinks this is part of like this, immoral lifestyle being taught in our schools, or whatever bullshit people say about that. So okay, she that's one of her executive orders is the furry ban in Georgia. But then one of her executive directives is that the Georgia Guidestones must be demolished. And she says, "I am the only candidate willing to stand up to the satanic cabal. Time is running out to support my fight. The Georgia Guidestones must be demolished." And then, okay, so that might have inspired someone out there. Here's what she had to say about it today. I love this tweet. She weighed in on this.
Of course she did. Her voice must be heard. Absolutely.
Here's what she said about it. "God is God all by himself. He can do anything he wants to do. That includes striking down satanic guidestones."
Okay, well, if God is God and can do whatever he wants, then why do we need a governor, Candy, or whatever your name is? Shouldn't he be able to run all that shit from heaven or wherever he is with his vast administrative network? Oh, you're so funny, girl. So she thinks that the Guidestones were from Satan, or were of a satanic nature.
Yeah.
And that they were destroyed by God specifically.
God bombed them, yeah.
God bombed them. Okay, here's why that's wrong. Because if there was a God and this God was so miffed about something that he was gonna, destroyify it, first of all, I reckon he'd get the whole thing, not just a portion of it, right? Being a God and all that. Secondly, if he was going to do that, I doubt he'd use explosives. I would think more like what? Lightning, no? Or like swarms of locusts or donkeys. Wasn't there something about a donkey in that book? I don't remember, like an ass or what, like donkeys, something more appropriate. Like I feel like God would make an entrance, a statement. He'd stay on theme. He would, a burning bush, like not a bunch of dynamite. That seems stupid. Also, while definitely there's parts of what you read from the Guidestones that I would call it cringy, for sure, icky, unsettling. There was nothing about it that seemed particularly satanic to me. But I think that there's a certain group of people who, at this point in our cultural development, have they've used the word satanic to mean anything that they disagree with
Yeah,
must
absolutely.
be the work of Satan. So I
It's
guess
such.
maybe.
I've always been surprised that people react this strongly to the guide stones. Like you said, a couple of the things are creepy. However, they're not very explicit or well explained, so
Right,
it's saying, the population should be 500 million people to be in balance with nature. It doesn't actually say the way you do that is by having a new world order genocide. It's just
right.
people interpret a lot into these guide stones when there actually isn't a lot to go off of.
No, and definitely when I think about the Guidestones, it has a very 2001 feel to me. It
Yeah.
seems like somebody wanted to have a word on what society would look like after our society, fell to the gay zombie frogs or whatever happens to us in the long run, the rebuilding of society, as it were. That being said, the idea that you should keep the population at 500 million seems a little bit less like, genocidal ethno cleansing and more like going back to the whole reproductive thing, sort of like eugenical situation, which I mean, also gross. I'm not even going to compare the two things on the scale of gross. They're both bad, and that's not good. But it seems less like New World Order, and frankly, more like the kind of shit evangelicals would be on about. Like, the end is definitely not. Absolutely, the apocalypse is going to happen. We have to have something set up in stone so that when humanity rises again like the phoenix, they do it properly and according to our standards. uh, and also, I would like to live forever in infamy because I wrote the rules for the whole new world, kind of thing, than anything that a Satanist would really do. Most of the Satanists I know just like read a lot of Nietzsche and listen to heavy metal music, and I don't know, they're all right. I'm not saying they're not ambitious. There are definitely ambitious Satanists, I'm sure, but like I can't imagine them being like, we should write
Well,
the rules for a new world order.
yeah, and the thing with these things is, I'm like, when? So these guide stones were put up in 1980, and everyone's
Right,
like, I'm like, what? When are they going to do it? It's the same thing when people are like, oh, the government's going to confiscate all of the guns. I'm like, when
right.
are they going to do it? I've been hearing this conspiracy for like 2 decades now. Like, it
Yeah,
never
totally.
happens.
Although I don't know, like it's again, and you and I have said this many, many, many times. Everything is crazy till the day it's not crazy no more. Because like people said the same thing about Roe v. Wade when women were like, "Hey,
It's
they're
true.
gonna overturn Roe v. Wade," and everybody was like, "Yep." What? No, what? No, you're over. Is it? Are you having that time of the month? Maybe have some chocolate. Calm down. Not gonna happen. And then lo and behold, and to be fair,
Well, even
you look
Trump getting elected, like everyone was like, yeah, right.
true,
We're
and
going
all
to
those
elect Trump.
and all those things took years and years and years. Like it was years of setup to get to the point where this seemingly impossible thing could happen. So like, I mean, stuff happens. It takes a long time sometimes. And after a while, everybody's like, that's never going to happen. But the whole time it's in progress. And then you wake up one day and bada bing, bada boom, you know, everybody's required to wear a blue polo shirt and refer to each other as Steve. And there's nothing you could do about it. Um, but like, I don't know. I don't know. That's wild. In general, the thing that bothers me is that there was this monument wherever in Georgia in public. I mean, it's not in the middle of like a city center or anything, but like people know where it is. They go and see it,
Yeah.
and somebody took it upon themselves to explode it because they thought that Satan put it there. That is really the disturbing thing in the
Yeah.
long run.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like you say, I mean, thankfully it wasn't in a city center, so no one was injured, I don't think.
Right. Right.
But that mentality, next time maybe it will be in a city center.
Right.
Be at some Mason symbol or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's,
Absolutely.
it's crazy stuff. I mean, And there's been now several cases of people inspired by this sort of conspiracy stuff to go on kind of crazy violent missions,
Yeah.
inspired by Pizzagate or Masons or even January 6th that was built
Yeah.
built on a conspiracy belief that the election was rigged or whatever.
Yeah, and I don't want to get into the biggest story that has happened since last week, which is that I think there was 4 major mass shootings over 4th of July weekend. The biggest one,
Yeah,
of course, happening in Highland Park in Illinois.
yeah.
It That was the 306th mass shooting in America in
Jeez,
2022. We're only in July. Mass
it's
shooting
fucking
here
crazy.
being defined as any shooting where 4 or more people were shot and killed. But Tucker Carlson obviously had to weigh in on this. And Tucker Carlson believes that the reason that there are all these mass shootings happening is because men are tired of women telling them that they're problematic.
This coming from a fucker that wears a bow tie. Like,
Right. Like, you're obviously still being dressed by your mom. Like, don't even talk to me. Shut up. Yeah. Yeah. So, like, the self awareness is, it's somewhat lacking. It's that stuff like we used to say about Donald Trump in particular, where at a certain point it almost starts to feel like theater, like a performance art, like some Marceau shit, and it's not. This is real life. So that's crazy.
we
This
we
is
got what fucker Carlson's talking about is we got like an incel problem in this
Yeah,
country for sure. That's where this
yeah,
is coming from. It's not coming from women. It's coming from fucking incels.
right. On that level, he's correct. That's probably true. But then, like, those are the same guys that need to be told that they're being problematic because, like, they are. They're being problematic. Anyway, that's real life. This is
Yeah.
welcome to real life, you guys. Awesome.
Here's some surreal life for you. The other big story, of course, was that they're like, hey, you know what? I think it's time to fire up that CERN Large
Woo.
Hadron Collider.
Amazing. Might as well. What? COVID is over. They were starting to get bored. They were like, let's turn on the juice and see what shakes loose. And they flipped that big fucking switch again. This is a great story. It's one of my favorite stories ever, actually. The last time that they turned it on, or the first time they turned it on, was in 2000. And the first time was in 2008. And then they turned it on again, I think right before, like shortly before the election of Donald Trump.
2016. Okay, and I found out
2016.
something about that year. I'll tell you, but first, go ahead. Go ahead.
Um, every single time that happened, there was, and correlation does not equal causation, kids. It could have been the same day that you had 2 pieces of toast instead of 1, or, whatever. You wanked it in the afternoon instead of the morning. That doesn't mean that's what caused these things to happen. But each time that it was flipped on, there was a dramatic shift, like in our culture. There was some watershed moment, 2016, of course, being the year that Donald Trump was elected president. And there have been a lot of people who have said, both jokingly and in a, well, hypothetically, the science said that is possible, sort of way, who have suggested that the reason this is, and CERN, in case you do not know, is just it's a tube. It's a great big tube, and it's like, I think it's 1.66 miles long or kilometer long in a big circle, and they put particles in it, see, and they speed them up real fast, like almost to light speed, and then they smash them into each other as hard as possible, which I think is the best use of science possible. They're just like, what if we smash some shit together harder than anything's ever been smashed together before? And everybody was like, yes, I will definitely spend $1 billion on that. The purpose of doing this ostensibly is to discover what particles do and what they don't do, and what the universe is made of. And there's been tons of research that's come out of this. Lots and lots and lots. The last time they did it, they discovered proof of the Higgs boson particle, which is a huge deal because it essentially proves that the Big Bang actually occurred, which up until this time was only a hypothesis. It was the going hypothesis that most people said, yes, this is the math, but there were huge holes in the data and they couldn't prove it. Everybody kind of accepted it, but it was still just a hypothesis. The Higgs boson more or less proved it. They found evidence of dark matter and dark energy because of this thing. Although I think if I had started to discover dark energy and dark matter, I probably would have put the lid on it right then and been like, you know what? I don't actually need any dark energy. I'm doing fine. But they discovered tons of things. And I'm sure they'll discover tons more things after this last time that they turned it on, which was yesterday. It's the first time they had turned it on in 3 years, because for 3 years they had to fix it because it was broken. Because the last time they flipped it on, something went wrong, which people don't talk about a lot, but it was broken. They broke it. They broke the great big smashy time machine thing. There was jokes going around for a long time that it was because there was a weasel that had gotten into it.
Yeah, I was just going to tell you, I pulled up this article from 2016, and I love this headline. The headline is, Weasel apparently shuts down world's most powerful particle collider.
Yeah. There was a weasel, but that's what you get with weasels. Everybody knows that. You can't trust a weasel around a particle accelerator. That's stupid.
Here's what the article says about it. The Large Hadron Collider, a 17-mile superconducting machine designed to smash protons together at close to the speed of light, went offline overnight. Engineers investigated the mishap and found the charred remains of a furry creature near a gnawed-through power cable.
Oh.
And this person concerned says they believe the creature was a weasel, probably.
A weasel, probably.
It must have been pretty badly burnt. They can't quite tell.
I think that's going to be the name of my first album, you guys. I think that's it. I think we're going to... A weasel, probably. Yep. Europe. Yeah, they don't for really real know, but they did say that this giant thing, which costs a lot, several billions, billion, monies, lots of monies to have this thing happen and work, was broken beyond repair, where they had to be fixing it for 3 fucking years because one weasel probably chewed through one wire. Doesn't that seem like the kind of shit that they would tell? If you were a 4-year-old walked in on grandma and grandpa doing the horizontal mambo, and the kid was like, what was going on? Was grandpa trying to hurt grandma? And you would just be like, no, they were, it was a weasel probably. And you would just change the subject and keep going. Doesn't it?
Weasel, yeah.
You know, that's what it sounds like to me. Cause I was like, okay, a weasel? Really?
But yeah, this weasel not only fucked the machine up, but this is kind of where a lot of conspiracy, then people were like, that weasel actually got into the machine and that flipped the whole alternate universe upside down.
Now we're in the weasel dimension. That's not good. That's not good. But I mean, but this is where conspiracy theories gain hold, because truth is stranger than fiction. Is that probably exactly what happened? The fucking guys who have the capacity to think about what's going to happen to hyper microscopic particles when you smash them together at light speed, and how that applies to the vast cosmos and the beginning of the universe, didn't stop to check and see whether or not there was rodents in their underground facility that could chew on their wires. Yes, totally. That could have totally happened. But also, it does kind of sound like bullshit. That was my first reaction. I was like, come on, dudes, that's bullshit. There's no way. Almost because it's so stupid that if that's what had actually happened, I wouldn't tell people that shit. I would have been like, oh yeah, there was a fire, something. I don't know. It was I wouldn't have told them it was a weasel. But yeah, the theory then was that what had happened was the reason it was closed down for 3 years was because something went terribly wrong.
Right.
And what that something was difficult to say, but certainly people had theories. The going theory, my favorite theory, although again, there's so many theories, and some of these theories are backed with like science, like actual science. Although I'd like to point out that the science we're talking about when we're talking about the science of what happened when probably a weasel chewed through that wire is quantum physics. And quantum physics is the Weird Al Yankovic of science. You can do goddamn anything with quantum physics and find some numbers to make it work. One of my favorite quotes in the world is, with the right math, you can prove that you can suspend an elephant over the side of a cliff by tying its tail to a daisy, which is true. There's math for that. But what they have suggested is that when that happened, we essentially destroyed the universe. We destroyed our own universe and were pushed into another universe, one that was adjacent to us, right next to us. The idea of multiple universes, parallel universes sitting right on top of each other, is a hypothesis that's been around for a very, very, very long time. But the more we know about how the universe works, the more possible it seems, and even likely. It's part of what they were attempting to study and prove with the Large Hadron Collider, which is part of what gave that particular conspiracy theory weight, was because some of the stuff they were doing was like proving spooky action at a distance, which already sounds cool, right? Spooky Action at a Distance might actually be my band's name, and then A Weasel probably will be my first album, which is just to suggest that two particles that were once connected, you can throw them on opposite sides of the universe, and whatever happens to the one particle will continue to happen to the other particle, which with our science is completely impossible because things have to be relative to each other. They have to be touching each other. They have to be interacting with each other in some way. In this way, the only thing that they had in common was that they once were a part of the same thing. So they did actually prove spooky action at a distance. They proved that particles tend to react to the observer, which was going towards the theory that like the universe is a simulation and all of that kind of stuff, which it's a conspiracy theory technically, but they proved that particles will react based on who is looking at them. They proved that at the Large Hadron Collider. So that kind of shit, you can't just do that mad scientist shit and then have a weasel get in and expect people aren't going to be like, you shoved us into another universe. So we destroyed the one universe, universe A, if you will, and we ended up in universe B. Here's the catch, though. Here's the creepy part.
We followed the weasel into that
We followed
into that universe. Yeah.
Not everybody from universe A made it. Some people from universe A snapped out of existence, a la Thanos, the second they flipped that thing on and they kaplowed the universe. And some people slid over into universe B and more or less took over for our counterparts here. The results of that is something known as the Mandela effect, which I feel like most people are familiar with. There's lists and lists and lists of Mandela effects. This is named after Nelson Mandela, who is a political activist and figure in South Africa, who actually died in, I think, 2012. He passed away. But there are many, many people who distinctly remember, including myself, him passing away in prison in the 80s. And they remember it. The thing about the Mandela effect stuff is people have very clear, distinct memories of these things. And they're very much the same as whole other groups of people who also remember it that way, to the point where when you show them how it actually is, they have difficulty believing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, by the way, we've got T's Weird Week Facebook group, one of my favorite places to hang out on the internet. It's where we get a lot of our weird stories from. So, just an hour before we went on the air here, I posted in the group and said, what's your favorite examples of the Mandela effect? And we got a few replies. Avery says the Berenstain Bears. This is a classic one. Some people remember the book cover saying Berenstain, and some people remember Berenstein bears.
Yeah.
And they have a very clear memory that it was spelt one way or the other. Jason mentions the Monopoly Man's monocle. This is
Yeah.
something that I don't. I get so confused by these. I don't remember what the accepted answer is.
Mhm.
Is he supposed to be wearing a monocle or not supposed to be wearing
He's
one?
supposed to be wearing a monocle. In Universe
Okay.
A, originally, he was wearing a monocle. And now, and here, he doesn't. And he doesn't. He doesn't never did. Ever. He never wore a monocle. Ever.
Whoa. See,
Yeah.
I thought he did. I thought he
Mm-mm.
did. I'm
Mm-mm.
getting sucked into this too.
Yeah.
And then Shane, who is watching the show right now too. Hi, Shane.
Hi, Shane.
He mentions this is another one. The Fruit of the Loom cornucopia.
I remember that one
People
too.
have different memories of Fruit of the Loom underwear having a little cornucopia with some fruit in it as part
Yeah.
of the label. He also says there's one about C3PO Star Wars toys having a silver leg. I'm not really familiar with
Yeah.
that one. The,
Yeah.
the toys were gold colored, but people remembering that they had a silver leg for something. And also, I hadn't heard this one either. Dilemma being spelled as dilemna with a MN instead of a double M.
Wait, it does have an N in it or it doesn't have an N in it?
Well, dilemma, the accepted spelling has two M's, but apparently
Yeah.
people remember it being spelled
I
with
can
a
see that.
MN.
Yeah, no, and like, see, a lot of these things could be explained away by being like, oh, maybe it was regional. Maybe
Yeah.
in your part of the country, dilemma was spelled with an N in the textbooks. Like there's regions of the country where one textbook, like distributor, pretty much provides the textbooks for like two,
Yeah.
3 states all in a row. And if it was misspelled in a spelling book that everybody
Yeah.
got, you could all believe that for sure. But there are people
Yeah,
like,
that totally happens, you know.
yeah,
Publishers
absolutely.
fuck up and yeah.
Absolutely it does. But then there's things like because I was reading a bunch of these. They're so creepy.
Oh,
There was
wait. Shane's correcting this. No, C3PO's silver leg is apparently in the movie, but the toys had both legs as gold. Also, Ray is pointing out another classic. This is People Swear That They Remember, a
yeah,
movie about a rapping genie starring Sinbad that was called Shazam. And we know there
yeah.
was an actual movie about a rapping genie starring Shaq that was called Kazam.
Kazam.
Right.
Yep, I remembered that one too. And that one I remembered happening before I even knew what the Mandela effect was. And it was one of those things that totally freaked my brain because I definitely remember watching that movie as a child
You do?
with
With Sinbad?
Sinbad. Yep. I have
Wow.
very clear memories of it happening. I have very clear memories of the Fruit of the Loom thing. I was pretty sure about the monocle on the Monopoly guy, but then I was like, maybe I was thinking of Mr. Peanut. They both had top hats and canes, and Mr. Peanut has a monocle. Like maybe that I'm just confusing them, whatever. The one that really effed me up was the Berenstain Bears one. Because when I saw it spelled that way, that was another one of those things that I saw and noticed before I knew about the Mandela effect, where I was like, that no. And there are floating around on the internet pictures where people have said, like, this is a book from universe A and this is a book from universe B and they're spelled differently. Now, obviously, that's probably a hoax. People have created dupes and or done Photoshop on those things. But it leans into the other theory, which is that not just that we destroyed our universe and are now in some of us, not all of us, some of us are in an alternate universe, but that it actually ripped a hole between the two universes. The other universe still exists, and we're just like, I guess, leaking. And not just us, that other things are leaking as well. And people like to draw comparisons between CERN and the Manhattan Project, which, I mean, oh God, that's a whole nother kettle of fish.
Yeah.
A lot to do with time travel and parallel universes, you know.
Yeah. So stuff is just kind of slipping in between these two dimensions here and there.
Yeah. So
Or
like
there's little cracks that can get through once in a while.
Yeah, like whole objects slipping in and out. And they're citing like there was some more that I read. it's not all just this parallel universe theory, which is in and of itself a fascinating theory. And people are saying that there's more and more evidence of this, of these weird things that are happening. These glitches in the matrix is the other term that people like to use a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's more just a matter of, not to say that weird things don't happen, not to say that we know anything about how the universe actually functions, because honestly, we are just monkeys on a spaceship. Like I don't feel like we know shit about fuck really. And so when weird things happen, we're all like, the moon. Sure. I think it's really more to do with the fact that people have more recording devices now than they ever did before. Like everybody has a video camera in their pocket, a high resolution video camera that they can use to do anything at any time and whip it out. And when these weird things are happening, they just happen to be able to share them with the world. They probably always happened at this frequency. We just didn't get to see them. They just became stories that your weird uncle told, or that you heard from the guy at the end of the bar, or, whatever. But now everybody can see the video on TikTok. And that's pretty much just what happened. But there's other theories too. Like, for example, they are trying to open, yes, a gate into hell. For scientific purposes, I guess. Just kidding. It's the new world order again. They're suggesting that they're trying to bring about the apocalypse.
Oh, with the collider is what you're saying.
Yep.
Yeah, that's his theory. Yeah.
Yep. That they're trying to open a gateway to hell to bring about the apocalypse. So in that way, it's kind of interesting that they blew up the Georgia guidestones today, because those were the stones that were meant to survive the apocalypse and show us how to rebuild society or whatever.
Yeah, so you sent me this article, and it mentions different theories that people have been coming up with in the last day. Pretty impressive. Yeah. Everyone's got a theory ready to go. This one says CERN has 666 in its logo, and the collider's loop is 16.6 miles in circumference, which is close enough.
Close enough.
And so that ties into the portal to hell. This one's pretty creepy too. The CERN, the reason the project exists is that they're inviting shadow people in from another dimension. I think that's, everyone's into the Stranger Things show, which is great. Yeah, it's super great. But I think that's kind of getting people's imaginations, like that's what they're visualizing on the other side of this collider, as sort of an upside down world.
Right. But in reality, it's probably more just like regular Cleveland, but with Berenstain Bears instead of Berenstain Bears. I think
everyone's favorite movie is Kazam. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, which is like probably exactly what it is. And the idea that there could be infinite Earths in infinite universes, in infinite parallel dimensions. Probably the next closest Earth to us is only just strange enough, only just this much different from the one that we're in right now, which is the worst part. Because anytime you're like, something don't feel right, or like, I got a bad feeling about this, it kind of reinforces that idea because of that uncanny valley thing, right? Like, where the scariest stuff is stuff that looks like it should be normal, but there's something about it that's just a little off, right? And the whole shadow people thing, at first I was like, how the heck does shadow people, like sleep paralysis, what does that have to do with alternative dimensions? But if you get into like the shadow people subculture, like the people who are very all about that and what it is and what it means, there's definitely huge going theories that indeed the shadow people are extra dimensional characters who are here observing us, or that essentially we are a simulation and they are the creators of this simulation. I don't know, did you get a chance ever to watch a documentary called The Nightmare? Is that a thing you ever enjoyed?
Oh, is that about sleep paralysis?
It's about sleep paralysis.
Yeah, I did see that. That was like scarier than a horror movie for sure.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I'm an aficionado of horror movies. I love scary stuff. Like, it's my whole shit. It's just makeup and jerking off and horror movies. But The Nightmare was one
Yeah.
of the scariest things I've ever seen in my life. And
Yeah.
it was a documentary. And it
Yeah.
was really, really well done because the people who did the documentary, uh, I couldn't tell at the end of it whether or not they thought these people were full of shit and suffering from some kind of neuroses, or whether or not they believed everything these people were saying. I couldn't tell what side of the fence the documentary makers were on, which is the sign of a really good documentary when
Yeah.
you're like, wow, I don't know what to think at the end of this. In that documentary, which you should all watch if you get an opportunity to do so, the people who were having the sleep paralysis definitely were like, this is the reason I think that this was a real thing that was really, some of them were anyway, that this was a thing that was happening in the physical world and not just in my head, because here are things that happened, and it involved a lot of deja vu, involved a lot of like clairsentience, where they kind of knew knew things that were going on that they had no business knowing what was going on. Their physical world was affected by what they were experiencing. um, so the idea that this is opening the door for the shadow people, that sounds crazy. That sounds very over the top and very dramatic. But if you listen to the theories that people have about the shadow people, I don't I don't think that science would ever do anything like that on purpose necessarily. To have them be like, New World Order and the scientists at CERN have enlisted the service of ravenous weasels to open a gateway to hell to bring the shadow people forth. Like, I doubt it. What I do believe, though, is that we don't know as much as we think we know about the universe, and that it's entirely possible that those scientists, God bless them, because they're trying to figure out how it all works, and the search of not for knowledge is noble, and I wish them the best of luck. It might also be a Jurassic Park situation, though, where just because you can doesn't mean you should. Just because you can hyperspeed things and smash them together doesn't mean you should do that, because it's
Yeah.
putting out tremendous amounts of energy. It's putting out EMP signals that are like off the charts, immeasurable, and hypothetically, they're all contained within this system. But also, that system was compromised by a weasel.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and I feel like they've been getting a little cocky about it. Like they're like, "Hey,
yeah,
all right, we're gonna crank it up to 11 now. Now that we've fired it up a couple times, this time we're really gonna crank it up." Here's
yeah,
from their own CERN press release. A round of applause broke out in the CERN Control Center on July 5th at 4:47 p.m. when the Large Hadron Collider detectors switched on all subsystems and started recording high energy collisions at the unprecedented energy of 13.6 trillion electron volts, ushering
Jesus.
in a new physics season. That I am not a scientist, and I can't tell you exactly what that means, but it sounds pretty intense to me.
Right. I think it means big, make a large, huge. I've never heard of anything happening like that's so much. That's so much power. That's so much energy. Like, if anybody knows, I know that we have some science nerds out in our like our fandom out there somewhere. Maybe Shane, maybe you know the answer to this. How much energy did the hydrogen bomb put out? Because it was a lot. But that energy is measured in joules, as opposed to this energy that's measured in electron whatevers. But they have to be comparable in some way. What I had read, and I didn't take the time to do the research and figure out if it was true, was that the amount of energy that this was putting out was comparable to like every nuclear bomb that's ever gone off, like huge
Oh,
amounts of energy. And that's why it was creating these huge electromagnetic pulses that were hypothetically contained within this thing. But it totally screwed with the electromagnetic fields. Like, it was a lot. Like, and they don't completely understand everything that happens when they do that, is the thing. In reading the scientific articles about this, they said, we don't really like know why that happens, but it does. Or it did one time and now we can't replicate it because we thought we knew why it happened, but apparently we don't. Like, all those kinds of things. And there's just a whole lot of meh, what's the worst that could happen energy like going on around that whole scenario. And I feel like there's just been too many times in the history of science where that kind of attitude didn't work out great for everybody all the time. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's someone was commenting in the group too. It's like, why would they want to do this now? Because
Right.
so there's so much crazy stuff going on. But.
Right. Why didn't you just put that coffin in there, that mummy that they found with the coffin juice in it that turned out to be all the sewage running in it from the entire city for 2,000 years? Yeah. You know who they should have had pull the lever on that shit? Keanu Reeves, because Keanu Reeves is not a human person anyway. There's all kinds of evidence that he's been at least traveling through time, if not space and dimensions. I'm sure Keanu Reeves was as far away from the Large Hadron Collider as he could possibly get yesterday, because he, if anybody does, Keanu Reeves 100% understands the ramifications of our hubris.
They should have had him there dressed as Neo, you know.
Right? Or John Wick, in case anything came out of the other side. Blam, blam. Just give him the old Georgia Guidestone treatment.
Here's I love that Shane is ready in the wings here because you know, I'm not going to go a link, but he's got a converter for atomic bonds versus electron volts. So
good job, buddy.
So we can make that calculation.
Amazing. Wonderful. Does anybody have their Texas Instruments calculator? I know you guys bring all of your mathematical equipment here to our podcast. Somebody check it out, for God's sakes. Yeah.
Okay, well, we got through those two pretty big stories, which both happened the same day when they fired. They both happened yesterday.
Yeah.
Well, I guess the Georgia Guidestones technically 4 a.m. would have been today, but you know, same 24-hour window, we'll say.
Yeah. I mean, anytime before most of the world's had their coffees, I think probably the day before.
Yeah.
So yeah. But they were beefy. Those were two pretty beefy, hefty, thick. Those stories were thick.
Yeah, for sure. So maybe we'll close with a couple of shorter stories I picked up. I love this one. There's apparently a hashtag. It's called Gentle Minions, and what it is there's this new movie out, Minions: The Rise of Gru. I think I saw one of these movies, Despicable Me. That was the first one.
Yeah,
right?
They're cute. They're cute
little minion characters. So all of these young people decided that they're going to do this trend where they wear suits, suit and tie, and they're all going to see the Minions movie, and they're having fun. They're like doing villainous poses and like folding their hands together and posing in group photos. And I was like, okay, that seems kind of fun.
That's cute. It's cute.
Whatever. But apparently, when you have so many preteens and teens doing this, some of them have been causing a ruckus, I guess. And so some theaters are putting up signs like this one. This is from a theater in the UK. Okay, I guess there's stuffy about it there. It says, customer notice, we are currently not admitting unaccompanied children wearing suits for Minions: The Rise of Gru. This is due to issues we have encountered over the last 2 days and its associated behavior. So,
yeah. What do you expect? You put a necktie on somebody, they're gonna act the fool. Like, obviously, that's gonna happen. I mean, I guess that seems like a pretty subversive thing to do, to make it so that suits are associated with troublemaking and mischief. I like that.
I hope it turns into like a social movement or like a gang. Gentle Minions.
Gentle Minions.
They're going to be out there rumbling with the Proud Boys or something.
That sounds like a new self-care routine. Gentle Minions. And you just put them in the bath with you and you light some candles. And then you go to a theater in Britain and, I don't know, pee on the carpet. I'm not sure what those kids got up to. I hope it was something cleverer than I would have come up with. Okay. Well, I stand with the Gentle Minions. Go cause some trouble, kids. Put on. You should be dressed. What was it that John Waters said a couple of years ago, that he was really mad that there were all these new kinds of rebels, but there was no uniform for them.
Yeah, they
There
didn't have
was,
a look,
yeah, they have a look. They didn't have an
like
outfit.
if you think about like computer hackers, they don't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily like have this hairstyle and
Right,
certain
right,
type of clothing that they favor. They just wear like jeans and a t-shirt.
right. There's no counterculture. They're all just
Right.
slovenly. Well, good. I'm glad that's been reclaimed. I'm glad they've decided to have an outfit for their shenanigans. I approve of that, and so does John Waters.
And then last story, you sent this to me. I'm very intrigued. Looks like we missed it this year. It's in March, but next year, I mean, road trip to Colorado, I would say.
Yeah,
There's
obviously.
a annual celebration held in the town of Nederland, Colorado. That's called Frozen Dead Guy Days.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah,
you want to tell us what this is about, Heidi?
absolutely. Well, first credit to Todd, because he actually found this story. He was very excited, and his first thing that he said was, "You have to tell T about Frozen Dead Guy Days." And I was like, "Well, I absolutely
Well,
will. What
I'm
are you
glad you
talking
did.
about?"
Yeah.
So apparently, what had happened was this woman was building a house, and it was just a sad excuse for a house. And so the city was like, "We need to check that out," and they did. When they got there, there was no plumbing and no electricity, and they were like, "Well, you can't have this house. This is how you got some nerve even calling this a house. We're gonna tear it down, kick you out." And she was like, "Well, first of all, you can't, and second of all, if you do that, who will take care of the bodies?" And so the town was like, "What? What bodies?" Turns out what had happened was her father had passed away and been cryogenically frozen, as you do, right? And that happened overseas. And then he got shipped to where they were in Colorado. His dead body did anyway. And she had been keeping him in the shed on dry ice for several years. And while she was doing that, she was like, "Hey, since we already have one dead guy in the shed in a cooler full of dry ice, what if we just were like, hey, does anybody else have or want to be a dead guy in a cooler full of dry ice in my shed?" And like three other people
Right.
were like, "Pick
Yeah.
me."
Yeah. Why waste the space?
Right. So the city was like, first of all, absolutely not. They changed the law to make it say you're not allowed to keep any dead people any place on your property. That's against the rules. Now, it's funny. The rules about how you dispose of and care for and maintain a corpse are incredibly flexible. And in most places, they're very, very nebulous. You can play fast and loose with a lot of the rules insofar as corpses go in a lot of places. Check out your local regulations. It's a hoot. But they made this rule, and then they turned around and they were like, "We're going to grandfather you in." See what they did there? It's the dead guy.
Very good.
We're gonna
Very good.
we're gonna let you keep these guys in here. It's cool. You still can't live in your house though, because it's just a box. And she was like, "Oh, all right." So she actually moved back to Europe, and sometime around this period of time, the city was like, "This is actually great. I, I love it. Let's just have a thing." So they did it originally as a fundraiser. There was a local, like a Home Depot or something like that, that donated a tough shed, like a new, nice, actual shed, because the shed before was like, it's just a shed, dude. Like, it was just like corrugated steel and plywood and 2x4s. Now it's a nice plastic tough shed. And like there's a guy who goes in and makes sure that the place is full of dry ice. That job's actually been handed down to like 3 different people. And once a year, they have this thing called Frozen Dead Guy Days. It happens in March. The reason it happens in March is because part of the thing is the polar plunge, where you have to break through the ice and jump in the water. And it kind of is on theme. They also have coffin races. Fun. Love that. Ice sculptures. There's a local ice cream place that makes a special flavor of ice cream just for Frozen Dead Guy Days. It's like, I think it was blueberry ice cream with a crushed Oreo swirl and gummy worms inside of it. Love that. They also hold the social event of the season, which is called Grandpa's Blue Ball, where people get very dressed up and they dance, I guess, and drink punch. It's a whole thing, and the family's been back and forth about it. Sometimes they love it, sometimes they hate it. They give tours of the shed where you can go and see the dead people if you would like to. It's a big attraction. They hadn't had it in a couple years because of COVID. But this last time that they had it apparently drew 25,000 people.
Wow.
It's one of the best attended festivals in the country.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, we definitely got to put it on the calendar.
Yeah.
For 2023.
Yeah, I bookmarked it. It's happening.
Cool. Okay, well, we are out of time now, but that was some interesting stuff. And thanks, everyone, especially Shane and Ray, for tuning in. And we're going to be back next week.
Bye everybody.